past year did not pass the National Assembly because the time of the election was nearby. Mr. Speaker, it saddens me when I hear that we have tea which is stored in Mombasa. I know very well that the demand for tea, Kenyan tea around the world, is steadily increasing. I know very well that Pakistan leads in the import, which is actually very good for our FX. They spend almost $520 million importing tea from this country. I know very well that the UK also follows. They import about, I think they spend about $111 million. Egypt spends about about $300 million importing tea. I'm baffled, Mr. Speaker, because earlier this year, I saw the Deputy President launching a strategy for the tea sector. And there were stories of a big warehouse costing over $3 billion being built to store the tea. And that shocked me because I've always known that the tea industry, the reason why the auction was set in Mombasa is because whenever the auction has been done there, tea was not stored there. Tea was just going out of the country. So I think it is imperative that the new Cabinet Secretary in charge of Agriculture should actually look at this issue. And the committee should look at what the previous Cabinet Secretary did. Because I remember the previous Cabinet Secretary, former Senator Linturi, went to Pakistan, had bilateral talks with the Pakistan government in terms of increasing the uptake of tea from this country. So what happened? So instead of just picking up from here and moving on, we should look at what happened so that it advises our future. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of legislation, I hope that when we pass this tea bill this time around, it is not going to be reactional. And then next time again, because of certain specific interest, we now again come with other amendments. Let us now exhaust any form of amendment so that we can be able to make laws which will be able to stay and live in this world for the rest of God's creation. Mr. Speaker, secondly, on this issue of sports, I've listened keenly to the contribution made by my colleagues. And the one that strikes me is the one that was brought about by Senator Sifuna, where he is suggesting that each county should set aside 1%. I believe if we really want to improve the sports sector in this country, this Senate should now bring in a motion to set up a conditional grant, because it becomes very difficult to go and tell the governor of Nandi or the MCAs of Nandi that set aside 1% of your budget to be able to do what? To improve on sport. The best thing we can be able to do, just like we passed a motion for a sports complex in Mombasa, to set up, we have a conditional grants, which are ring-fenced. And then, once we have done that, Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to remind ourselves of our sovereignty power. This issue of depending on the West so much for every decision we make. I was sitting in this house when we were looking at reports on FKA. And Sifuna is right. Senator Sifuna is right. At that time, it was very difficult for us to bring in any changes. So once we have our own funds and we build we nurture our own talent, we can actually be able to go very far. We have experts. In Narok County, Mr. Speaker, we have Billy Conchala. Billy Conchala was one of he set the world record in 800 meters. I think it was just broken recently by Rudisha, who is also from Kilgoris. So I think if we tap into the resource of these legends who have played, who have demonstrated to the world that, yes, in Kenya, we have great men and women who can be able to, to run, ensure endurance, we can actually be able to go very far. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I want to remind my colleague, the distinguished Senator Beth Siango, that the moment we now start praising the executive is the moment we fail. No wonder, Mr. Speaker, today, if you go on social media, you will find two lawyers who Senator Sifuna said is going to give direct tickets to be able to run for office, opining, their negative views of the Senate. They are saying we've become sort of like flower girls and boys for the executive. I want to remind us that we are here to check the executive. We're not here to start saying, oh, thank you, President, for swearing in our colleagues from our political party. You know, let us be reminded that we are here as Parliament to be able to oversight the executive. You know, we are not here to become an extension of the executive. I completely detest that, Mr. Speaker. And I want to remind my dear sister, the distinguished Senator Beth Shianko, that...
What is your point of order, Senator Chiranke?
Mr. Speaker, understanding Order 101, there is what we call responsibility of facts. Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the minority whip in this House, seated next to SG of ODM, when ODM Central Committee sat under the leadership of our brother and the next AU chairman, Baba Raila Odinga, and resolved to work with the government, is he challenging the position of ODM Central Committee? That resolution was there, Mr. Speaker. Can he table, Mr. Speaker, can he table the evidence to the same?
Senator Chirange, you're totally out of order. Have a seat and allow Senator Ole Kina to conclude his intervention.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I'm in this House to ensure that we respect the separation of powers. I'm in this House to ensure that we respect the rule of law and the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, when I was sitting here, and I'm going to now deviate from advising my sister, you know, I sat here and I received a supplementary order paper. And in the supplementary order paper, order number 8, Mr. Speaker, talks about amending the division of revenue. Mr. Speaker, I've been in this Senate for the last 7 years or so. And by the time we pass the division of revenue, there is a process. We start with, estimates, the budget policy statement. We go to medium-term debt strategy. And then eventually, we go and we pass the division of revenue. We did that. Why are we reinventing the wheel? Mr. Speaker, let us just for once respect the rule of law. You know, I sat in this House, very House, and we actually passed the third generation formula, which determined how much money is sent to counties and how much money is maintained. We set a bare minimum. Now what we are being asked to do is to now go against the Constitution. You know, I mean, this is ludicrous. You know, there's no time, Mr. Speaker, that we've actually even, the money that we've passed has all gone to counties. Treasury has always had a debt. So I think when we talk about these issues, let us be factual and let us remember that we are guided by principles. We have the rule of law. You know, the moment we start now opening the division of revenue debate, we're actually going to be abdicating on our duties. You know, then at that point I'll just tell us, let us just fall and go. Because if you're telling us that what we passed here, 400 billion, we are now being told to reduce. We forget that when you look at the division of revenue bill, or rather act, if you look at section 5 of that, it says any shortfall is absorbed by the national government. You know, so why is the national government not absorbing it? Colleagues, let us defend our counties. That is why we are here. You know, we are here to make sure that we defend the rule of law. You know, we stop dancing to the tune of the executive. Yes, the Gen Zs are saying that there is a lot of wastage of public funds. But it's not about our counties' structures. Our counties need to be built. We need to be able to support our counties. When it comes to the issue of accountability, we now deal with the issue of accountability. Madam Speaker, we have the DPP, who is now notorious in making sure he's withdrawing corruption cases, and yet we keep on talking about fighting corruption. You know, ESCC is also there. In fact, I always say ESCC is the most corrupt body in this country. You know, because they don't really respect their institutions. So, Madam Speaker, as I conclude, let us remember that we are here for a very short time. The time we are here, let us make sure that we leave a mark in this country called Kenya. You know, this issue where we have laws and they're only good on paper, or they are determined by other interest bodies, where we just make laws which are reactionary, must come to an end. So, Madam Speaker, the Senate is there to oversight the executive, but not to be an extension of the executive or to dance to the tune.